I want to welcome everybody for attending Let's Talk ICT. Today's session is really about digging in deeper to those messy remediation examples that you might find when you're using Adobe Acrobat to make a PDF accessible. And this one specifically came about when we asked the last group that attended our session for getting more information on how to make tables and fillable forms accessible. And I'm really happy to have Kevin Lanahan from the Department of Conservation come back. He's an excellent educator. He's been working with us through Power Up over many years and is really one of our state experts in how to do this process for remediating a PDF. So I want to introduce Kevin Lanahan to you, and I'm going to turn it over for him to fill this hour.
Yay, thank you, Eileen. This normally when I'm remediating these things, I'm sitting quietly in my office at home or at work, and I don't talk. So if I get quiet, somebody remind me I have to use the voice outside my head to to continue to communicate, because it's been a long pandemic, folks. This is I think the fourth part of a series on accessible documents and PDFs. And what we're going to look at is some really horrible fails on the part of usually translation or imports from Word or maybe Excel. Things that just didn't go right. Some of them have to do with bad form design or bad table design. Sometimes there's just glitches, and it's like, well, if you can't get the original person to fix them because they've done all that they can, then you get to do it. So let's dive in. Let's see. Whoops. So on the agenda, fixing bad tables. We're going to do that for a while. We're going to fix some forms, and all of this is going to be a demo. Just a little bit of background or some points we're going to cover. When we have tables, the most common problems, the things that you'll get dinged on with when you do an accessibility check, would be a lack of headers. That's having a TH cell at the top of a column or at the side of a row. And then scoping to columns and rows. When you scope, then each cell knows exactly what column heading and what row heading it goes to. So it's harder to lose your place when you're listening to a table being read. The other issue that happens a lot is regularity, and that's when table rows have different numbers of cells. You'll see this a lot with stuff imported from Excel. People that use a lot of Excel want to get every bit of content in their spreadsheet, and it's like a table really just needs to be data. The other issue or the other common problem is complex tables. This is when you might have multiple rows of headings at the top of your table, or you might have breaks in the middle of the table with a new idea. And if you can't get the content creator to make a more accessible PDF, a more accessible table, a simpler table, then we have to go in and do some things manually. Tables always work best when they represent a single idea or a single data set. When you start mixing too many ideas, it just gets complicated and it's hard to read. So less common problems. I see this a lot when people import, they make the first row of their table a heading. So they'll put an H2 or an H3. This is in lieu of the HTML caption tag, but it kind of bollockses up the table and it affects regularity. The other The other problem, and this is what we're going to look at a bit today, in addition to these other ones, are when we have incomplete tables or just a really poor table capture. And this can happen for a variety of reasons, and I don't know what the reasons are because I didn't make the tables. So just remember, content creators tend to abuse tables. If we look at, this is an example from a budget thing. And, what is this table doing? It looks like there's 6 or 9 different ideas. It's just, no. It's too hard to communicate online. So our first demo, it's going to be disappearing tables. We have content that looks like a table, but it's not formatted as a table. And we'll see some usual problems with scope and headers and things like that. So let's switch over to Acrobat. And I've already done an accessibility check. You can add this into your toolbar, and just when you pull up a document, make that the first thing you hit, and it'll tell you all the things that are wrong. We're going to look specifically here at tables, and we have 2 issues, and headers failed and regularity failed. So we're going to start with the easy ones first. We're going to look at headers. And if we click on the down arrow, that'll expand this item. If we look at element 1, if we right click, it'll show us what item we're looking at. And it's a little table, it looks like, on the last page of this document. And what we want to do is show this in the tags panel. So we're going to open that up in the tags panel, and it's way down here at the bottom. It's the very last thing in the thing, in the tag view over here on the left. And it looks like what we have is a 4-row table with kind of a super total cell underneath it. But instead of having 4 rows, we have just 2 cells. So if we right click in the cave cell, for instance, and go to table editor, we can see, whoops, sorry. We can see that we have 1 cell, 2 cell, 3 cells. So obviously that's not correct. So in addition to there not being headers, the table's just kind of messed up. One of the reasons I think this happens is because this is a table where the cells don't have any borders. And without borders, it makes it a little confusing as to what this is supposed, what this document or what this page is supposed to be. So fortunately, this is a nice short example. We can fix this pretty quickly. We can see that we need another 4 or another 3 table rows. We only have 2 here. There's the first one, there's the second one. And we can do that, again, really simply with tools that Acrobat has. And if we right click on that first table row cell and just go to new tag, table row is all the way at the bottom. We can just add a new table row. Do that 2 more times. We don't need to add titles or anything like that. Now, if we look deeper into this table row, we can see we have just 1 cell, and the cell has all of the content in it. Well, we need to break that out. So we're going to use our reading order tool. And we're just going to start making table cells. And as we add the table cells, this should, we should see this, we'll see this when we get down here at the bottom of the table. Okay, so table cells, boom. Let's go into our table. Now we have a table row. We have two items. These are obviously not in the correct order. So we know that aquatic cave is right here. We can just drag that down to the next row. We can delete that one. So now when we look at this first row, we have cave and rank. That's what we want to see. Now, the next thing we want to do is make those headers. And a quick way to do multiples of these, if we come over to the tags panel, click on the first one, hold down your shift key, click on the next. That'll highlight both of them. And if we go to our properties tag cell, we can just change those to header cells. And boom, now they're headers. So these are the cells we added. Here's terrestrial type. We can figure out that's going to go there. Total cave types is going to go into this last one. We have our aquatic cave rank. And so we're going to pop that in here. Now, this is a simple table, and it's a small table. Imagine if you had like a 5-page table, maybe say a table of all the counties. You know, it'd be 115 different rows. This would be really time consuming and horrible. So again, we want to try to get the source document, Word or Excel, into the best shape that we possibly can. So now we've got some heading columns. We need to do a little more work on any table. And so we're going to come up here to Cave. We're going to click on Table Editor again. And you can see in my on my screen, the Cave and S-Rank, the table headings, are kind of a pink background color, and then the table data cells are a gray color. You can customize those colors. But what I'm going to do is highlight this Cave cell. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and also highlight the rank cell. I'm going to right click, go into table cell properties, and I'm going to give these a scope of column. So that lets a screen reader know, hey, we have a column called Cave and a column called Rank, and then anything under that will fall under those column headings. If we had more than 2 columns, I'd probably make aquatic cave and terrestrial cave and total cave types into row headers. But I'm going to scope those to rows, but we're not going to do that on a simple table. So the last thing we need to do, let's take a look at that very last cell, and you can see we only have one cell in here, but we have a 2-column table. There's 2 ways to fix this. One, we could go in and manually add another data cell, and it would just be blank, but it would fix the glitch, as it were. Probably the best thing to do here is to right click, go into our table cell properties, and just give this a column span of 2. It's always going to give you a warning. You just say yes. Now we can go back here and let's do a check again. And you can see we passed the headers. We still have a regularity issue, but that, as it turns out, is on a different table. A couple of things to notice as you're reviewing documents. This is an interesting one. If we go back here to the cave, we have obviously a 2-column total cave type number 2. But if we look on this first page, we have forest, S rank, but 15 is right there next to forest type. Again, that's a problem with the original design of the table. This I happen to know was done in Word. And so that's something that should get fixed. This document has some additional things. I said I'd talk about disappearing tables. And so let me go find some tables here. So here's our first one, our natural communities type. And we know that this one down here is a regularity issue. We have a table here for woodland, and you can see when I click on table, everything is highlighted. But then when we get underneath there, we have a bunch of H4s and paragraphs. And that's certainly not right. Those should be tables. So for some reason, when the conversion from Word was made on this document, even though it looks exactly like what's above it, it didn't recognize these things as tables. Again, I don't know why. I'm not going to try to diagnose a Word problem, but this happened. Fortunately, there's an easy way to fix it. Again, we have to have the reading order panel turned on. When we do that, you'll see the cursor turns into a crosshair. If we highlight the table, or what we want to be a table, and make that a table, now we can go in here, and rather than drill down and try to find it, we're going to do a little search for it. Find tag, we're going to highlight, in this case, the word Savannah. We're going to go to our tags menu and find the tag from the selection. And so here's our table way down here. We can actually take this table and we'll drag it under this other table under woodland. So things are kind of in the right order. And so now we have a table structure. We can see we have TD Savannah. We have a table data cell for rank. We can highlight those. Just come over to our object, our properties, make those headers. Yay, we're on our way. The rest of this, we look at the next row and it's got 4 items in here. We would do the same process we did before. We would create 3 new table rows. We would outline table cells, and we would drag them into the right position. So if we do that, well, let's not do that, but let's go back up here to this forest table types. We know that this was a regularity issue. If we right click on that cell, we can see that it's a data cell. It just has 1 column. We'll make that 2. Click through our error. We come back here to our accessibility checker and check again. Hey, our tables have passed. Now, I took the simplest, shortest examples on this document. And this is something, this document, I've been getting this for like 15 years. This is the first year that I've ever seen this problem. So I'm not sure what happened, but the content creator just couldn't fix it. So it was up to me to go in and fix it. I had to go through the 4 pages here and create tables, create extra table rows, move stuff in. Time-consuming process, as you could see. So we don't want to spend a lot of time doing that if we don't have to. Whoops, let's go back to here. Another example, and this was in the same document, was partial tables. And again, I tend to think that this is a problem because there weren't any borders on the table, but I haven't been able to confirm that. this table will have the same kind of problem, so that we saw before. We'll go to partial tables. Here, we have a very, very long a table of various species. This happens to be species in Missouri and their endangered or threatened status in Missouri. So you can see we've got 6 columns. We've got kind of a header for each family of species, so lichens, liverworts. We have scientific name, common name, S rank, G rank, and then on some of these, when they are actually threatened or endangered, we'll have a state status or a federal status. I've already run an accessibility check on this, and we can see that we have some header issues. And so if we go and look, this is odd because you would think it would be highlighting that entire row with scientific name, common name, or the entire table. It's missing part of the table. So that's a problem. We also have some regularity issues. Let's see if we can find it. It's everywhere, so we're not going to worry about that. But let's take a look at what's going on here. And there's a lot of things going on, and some of these I think you'll be really familiar with, or you'll have seen them in some of your own examples. But so we're going to go to the table, and so here's the first thing. We have a table that just has these headings in it. It has the last 4 columns. The second table has scientific name, common name, and all the species. And I'm not sure all of the content under S rank and G rank doesn't seem to be captured anywhere. So if we, again, turn on our reading order panel, let's just do a check. Let's highlight that. Let's see if we can find this in the document. So we'll come back over to our tags, go to the menu up here, and look for find tag from selection. And so it's buried down here in a paragraph for some reason. The one right above it is liverworts, way down the bottom. So there's some randomness going on here that that we need to fix. So a couple of other things to look at is when we look at this table here with the different ranks and statuses, we can see we have 2 rows, and we have our S rank, G rank, but state and federal, for some reason, are on their own row. That's not a proper header. This happens a lot when people don't wrap their header cells in Word or Excel. Sometimes it may be a default on the part of Word. I'm not sure, but I see it on probably 90% of the multi-line or wrapped headings that I get from staff. Fortunately, easy to fix. We can grab the content there, federal, and we can just drag that down under the proper box, under the proper table data cell, do the same thing with state. And then we can just get rid of that line, that table row, because we don't need it. Now, having done that without fixing the rest of the table, it's like, we're probably going to have to do this again. But we're going to kind of go through the same steps that we did on the other example. We're going to grab the table. We're going to be very careful to make sure we get all of the content that we want. Species and statuses here should be a heading like an H1 or an H2. We don't want to include that in the table. So we've grabbed all of our content and we're going to make that a table. So now I'm going to just grab the word lichens here and do a search. Find the tag, and it's buried way down here. This is one disadvantage of creating that table. It seems to put a lot of sections and parts into the thing, makes it kind of hard to find. I'm just going to move that up a bit and work on it from here. So we can see here in our first row, we've got state and federal status. So we're going to fix this just the same way we fixed it before. Highlight and drag, federal status, state status, drag and drop and delete the old one. We can also then take all of these table data cells and just change them into a header cell. And so that way we know we have some headings in here. So lichens is problematic. If we had some control over the content creator, what we would ideally do here is have a caption. So if species and statuses up here at the top is an H1, then lichens would be an H2. We would have a table with a with columns of scientific name, common name, S rank, G rank, state status, federal status, and we'd have a simple table going down. Then we repeat the same thing for liverworts and hornworts. Liverworts and hornworts would be an H2, and then we would repeat the header row for the new table. That's not what we have, and this table actually goes on for about 20 pages. So you can imagine it's a bit of a nightmare. So we have a couple different ways we can deal with this. One way to do this would be to make this cell, make it a heading cell, a header cell. And what we'll be able to do then is tie that in with the scientific name, common name, S rank, G rank. We should also then check our table editor. If you can see, when you click table editor, it'll give you a nice grid. If everything goes according to plan, we have nice rows here. But we can take a look at the table cell properties here. Table cell, we really don't want to scope on that, but really we want that to span 6 columns. We can do that and then come over to our tags and just get rid of the rest of the tags in that row. So we have one table that goes all the way across. So now let's see what happens if we hit the reading order again. You can see that we have still our lovely grid structure, but that lichens then goes all the way across. So another problem we have, and I've seen a couple different things happen here. Sometimes when I do this, this first cell will break right after the first line. And so this word here, verticillata, becomes the only cell on a new row. You have to go and combine those again to get a clean table. In this case, that one worked, but our second row, we have the same problem that we saw in the other example where we have multiple rows in that that column. So what we have to do there is go in and again, manually create table rows, identify the cells, and then put them all in the right order. And that, as you can imagine, is takes a while. So the other thing, though, that we know, since we have multiple columns here, we probably want this first row here, this first column, to be a row header. So I'll show you how that works. Right now, I've got this Cladonia sericornis highlighted. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and just click on the other cells right underneath it that I want to have in that I want to affect. I'm going to right click, go to table cell properties. We're going to make these header cells and we're going to give them a scope of row. And so now all of these rows any cell in this table will be associated with a row at the top, row on the side. If this were a simple table, that's all we have to do. But if you think about this, really liverworts and hornworts, since we don't have headings below that, really this is just going to be one gigantic table. And this is what we don't want to have to do. Fortunately, I mean, there is a way to deal with this. We can go into our table. If we right click while we have the table editor open, we've identified header cells. We can auto generate header cell IDs. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. If we have a simple table that's not too big, this isn't too complicated a process, but if we have a lot of headings, a lot of header cells, this is going to be messy, because what we have to do is, say, for a lichen, for this first one, we can go into table cell properties, and we have to associate the cell IDs manually. So, the first one, we're going to put in common name. We're going to add then, this is part of lichens. And then this is going to be part of, you can see the way that this is set up, R3C1, row 3, column 1, Cladonia. That's how we know this is the right row. We can do that. Now this cell is going to be associated with common name, scientific, or lichens, and this scientific name. But you have to do that individually for each cell. And as you can see, that takes time. This is why we need simple tables. When we start adding liverworts and hornworts, and then after that, mosses, and this goes on literally for 20 pages. There are like 1,000, over close to 1,000 different species. That could take you days. So we really, again, we want to go back to having simple, easy to read tables where each one has one idea. We want one idea for lichens, one table for liverworts and hornworts, one table for mosses. Again, I think that if we had borders around this in the original document, it would probably be easier when Acrobat, when it gets converted into PDF, to identify that this is a table and that there are 6 cells in each row, but don't know that for sure. Okay, so again, tables, messy. Let's go back to our demo, and the next thing, we're going to move right on to fixing forms. Again, tables, I could do an hour on tables. I could do an hour on forms. We're going to try to get it all done now. So fixing forms, most common problems is that there aren't any form fields. When you create forms, if you don't have your document set to tag annotations, it won't create a form field for the items. You have to go in and manually do that. A lot of times after you create a form, there are some form fields that are missing after you do the conversion. And I see this a lot with checkboxes, especially if they're small. And then untagged form fields kind of goes with no form fields. All the forms, the form elements are there, but they're not tagged. So we're going to go to example 3. That is our form with no fields. And what we're going to do is use Acrobat's automated tool to fill this out and then do some manual fixes. So let's switch over to our bare form. And we've done a accessibility check. We don't have any form fields on here now, but we definitely want it to be a form. Over, this will be in tools. I've got it. I don't know if it's over in your right sidebar by default, but we can go to prepare form. We can tell it to select the document that we're currently using and tell it to start. Boom, this has added very nearly all of our fields. And you can see, new, update, blah, blah, blah. This has done a pretty good job. There's a couple of things that didn't catch. We have this field here, if UTM NAD. I don't know what that means, but it's some form of kind of lat long location thing. And they have some ghost content in there. I think that's what it is. I'm not sure why these numbers are in there, but I think that made Acrobat think this was not a thing that needed to be filled out. And again, ideally you check with the content creator. Is it supposed to default to 83 and 15? Don't know. We can go into actually, let's go back to accessibility. Let's do a quick check. We can see that we have form issues and we have tagged form fields has failed. So again, this super common. If we go to our tags panel, tag annotations is checked. This is a fairly easy thing to fix. And again, there's a couple different ways to do this. But what we're going to do here is just come up here to the menu, go to find element. We're going to look for unmarked annotations because that's where all of these are. We're going to find the first one, and you can see it's highlighting this new, and we want to tag it. And it's going to ask us what kind of tag we want. And we want a form tag. So we're going to add that. It's immediately going to go to the next form field that it finds. And we're going to tag that and tag the next one. And we just keep doing that throughout until we run out of form fields. Now, as you can see, this is adding all these form fields below the document. What we really want is for them to go in the flow of the document. So we want to find here, here's a line, EO status report, check 1, new. And then we've got a field after that. If we click on the next one, we can see that this cell or this checkbox seems to be associated more with the update with. So these are not aligning to the correct items, to the correct labels. So a way to fix that, if we open up our reading order panel, we can just make this a paragraph, make update with new mapping a paragraph, update without mapping a paragraph. And so if we go and find, here's our new, we're going to go find our form, and we're going to just pull that right underneath that paragraph tag. So the form tag, which contains the OBJR code for new, is right where it's supposed to be. We look at the next one, and let's find, well, that's interesting. So it looks like all of these, oh, okay, that's a form. We can start dragging things up. In this case, we've got this figure. Really, we can just take the path. We don't need the figure. We can delete that. Let's see, let's close that. This is where I start thinking inside my head and forgetting to use my, let's explain this to the folks watching at home. We need to make sure that the document makes sense when we're, even before we create a form. We need to make sure that all of these, all of the text is associated correctly, because, as you can see, it didn't identify new and the checkbox as a unit, or update with mapping as a unit. You have to go in and check that. The other thing that we need to do is make sure, as we look over here at our fields, make sure all of these terms make sense. Some of them don't. If we look, let's see, physical measurements, you can see is really EO population data. There's a couple of different issues with this one. If we click on the first one and go to properties, it seems like it would make more sense to say, just call it EO. And the tooltip, whoops, EO. I don't know. Oh, I see what it's doing. I'm going to the wrong thing. Okay, we need to, and then we need to make sure there's a tooltip there, because Acrobat likes to have a tooltip. So if you look at this, this is 3 lines. It's not 3 fields. It's one field that's multi-line. If we highlight these other 2 fields, we should be able to delete them. Whoops, here, let's close that. Field, well, let's just do them one at a time. Delete, there we go. And then we can drag this cell down. So we have one big text box. We can go into the properties, go into options, and say, make that multi-line. Now, somebody can just start typing in there. It'll fill out, everything will be fine. You can adjust the fonts to whatever you want, put limits on it, but it makes more sense to have that as one field. So the other thing that didn't happen is we have this if UTM NAD. Again, don't know what that is, but if it is supposed to be something that they fill out, then we're going to need to create a field. And fortunately, that's easy to do. You just come up here, grab the little text box, since this looks like it'll be a text field, and pop that in. Now I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down to a size that makes sense. We're going to right click on properties. We're going to call this UTM NAD. Change the tooltip to UTM NAD, boom, and we're done. We'll close that. We need to find out where that is in here, UTM NAD. Obviously that's in the wrong spot, so we'll want to drag that down to wherever the coordinates are. Let's see, it's going to be down just a little bit. So here's another example of why we need to check these items. We look at coordinates here. Coordinates, it looks like it has two fields. The second one is undefined. Again, checking with the creator of this thing, we might want to change that to longitude. Whoops. And latitude. Whoops, sorry. Go to the undefined one, and we'll call that and so now we have this more or less fixed. We still need to add a field for the zone. We need to make sure things are moved into the right place, but you basically have repaired whatever damage has been done there. So, you know, create your form, tag your cells, or tag your form fields, drag them up. Let's see, we have about 10 minutes left. Let's go back here. Yes.
Can I ask a question about form fields? And what do you think about adding a submit button? Because sometimes I see that on state forms.
I think that if you have a submit button, you'd probably be better off creating an HTML form, you know, with whatever content management system you use, WordPress or whatever. So if you want to program it, that's great. I don't. I never have. Forms, again, for the most part, it'd probably be better if we had an online form, an HTML form to do this, rather than have this paper thing. Because, you know, how's anybody going to get it? They have to go online to get it. So if they can go online to print out a form or fill out a form, they could just fill it out in HTML. So there are always some forms. There's some ad hoc things, like maybe there's an event coming up that you want people to mail in, you know, or send some fax, or not fax, but email a reply in. But putting submit button, that's something that I've never done, never really been a fan of. You can do it. I mean, Adobe loves to tell you that you can do everything in Adobe, but it seems like if you're going to that trouble, you may as well just make a form. So the answer is I can't answer your question.
I think you definitely addressed the challenge, and maybe the best way to do it is just make it an HTML. So thank you.
PDFs should really be a last resort. More and more, everyone, you know, more and more people are online. There's a few folks that have spotty internet connection or no cell phone reception. But enabling them to do it online, having a PDF that you can print out and mail to someone is great. You know, there are some folks that need that. There is a digital divide. But for the most part, yeah, no. I mean, PDF should be restricted to things that we definitely want people to print off. like maps or something. For conservation, it's maps. You can go out to an area and there's no connectivity. You need to have a paper map to get you through. Big reports should probably be in PDF. But again, the bigger the report, the more opportunity for messing things up you have if they didn't do it right the first time. The last demo that I had, forms with fields, we're going to use the same form that we used before, and we'll just kind of take a quick look at it just to see. This is one that it came to me already populated with table fields, so it was just a matter of going in and checking it out, and you can see immediately when we do if we do a accessibility report, let's check again, we're not really seeing a problem with forms. So it looks like everything got tagged. Now, whether it got tagged correctly is another thing. We have to go in and manually check. But one obvious thing is location uncertainty. We have a checkbox for meters, feet, and miles. For whatever reason, it didn't pick up meters and miles. Don't know why. We would have to go in and manually create those. The other thing we would need to do is go through and make sure that the table or all of the fields kind of make sense, that they're labeled correctly. We also need to go in and just manually inspect the form. Go in, hit the tags panel, and then just start arrowing down to make sure that we have things in the right order. So, right here we can see here's a paragraph, and this paragraph is 2 lines long with all sorts of items. That's not correct. So we're going to need to go in, we're going to need to make this EO report status check 1. That's a paragraph. New is a paragraph. Update with mapping. We're going to need to separate those out into elements. And then each of those elements, if there's a form field associated with it, needs to have the form field inside of that tag. It's painstaking work, and it takes a lot of time. That's the other reason to avoid these as much as possible, and have create your form in WordPress or Drupal or whatever content management system you may be using. If you do need to put a form online, though, it should be fillable. One, it'll be a lot more legible, and so when they print it off and send it in, it'll make data entry a whole lot easier. But in this case, yeah, you need to look at this critically. Adobe is going to, when these things get converted, they're going to look at these based on lines. If we look here, like at this EO population data, we have a bit of a field here, and then we have these fields down here. If EO population data was all wrapped in a box, then Adobe may have a better understanding that this is one field and not 3 separate fields. Again, making sure things are simple, keeping things kind of outlined and boxed in is really useful. Years ago, we had a forms management office in state printing, and they would go through every single form that every agency would put out and try to make sure that it met standards. And that went away 15 years ago, but I kind of miss it. And because we had very consistent results, and they made sure that things, that content would be accessible. So I know that was super, super fast. Uh, the thing is, you'll keep seeing the same ideas over and over again as you come across tables and forms. And it's just a matter of systematically going through and dealing with them. There are some tools out there that can work well for you. Common Look, I think, is one. And what was the one, Eileen, we were looking at the other day? Equidox or something like that.
Equidox, yes.
Yeah. And they seem to do a pretty good job, but they're all pricey. And so, the state of Missouri, if they want you to spend your time remediating PDFs, then by golly, that's what you'll get to do. Again, I know this was kind of super fast and trying to cram a whole lot of information in. If you have a problem form or a problem table and you're just not quite sure what to do with it, go ahead and contact me. Send me an email, and I'll be happy to take a look, and if I can offer any advice or just offer an approach for resolving it, I'd be happy to do that for any state worker. For anyone else watching this on YouTube, I don't want to do it for you, but I'll do it for the folks here.
Kevin, we have a question. Could
Yeah.
you repeat the program names? You mentioned Equidox. What was the other one?
Equidox, EQUIDOX. The other one is Common Look, I believe is the name of it.
Thank you. And the video that we did with Equidox, where they provided a demonstration last week, is on our YouTube channel, where you'll find, the other sessions. And then this one will be up within the week.
Wow. You're fast.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Kevin? We have a few minutes left.
The more of these you do, the easier it becomes, the more confident you'll be. I learned something new just the other day, looking at forms. I had been, just let me pull up a form real quick. When I wanted to make a paragraph, so let's say here for this OE ID, I just draw a box around it. I'd include the box and just say, hey, make that a paragraph. When we do that, if we take a look in here, you can see we have the OEID, we have that underline there, and we have that object code. But what we don't have is that form field tag. And it is a best practice to have that. That's the way Acrobat has kind of designed or Adobe has designed this to work. So I just found out I've been doing something wrong for years. And it's like, okay, I got to change my behavior. So, there's always one more thing that you can learn. And I've been doing this for 20 years. So yeah, just, jump in. Anything, if you make it better, that'd be great. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be better.
Thank you. And Jeff contributes in the comment section. He says, it can be painful in the beginning, but it does become quite simple after you've done a couple of documents. Tables are by far the worst for him, but forms are quite simple.
I would agree with that. It just, forms, we're government. We like big forms with lots of stuff. And it gets cumbersome. We have I've had a 7-page form that had over 400 different fields on it. And it's like, seriously? And then they change something and I have to do it all over again. They change a couple of things. So.
Well, I want, thank you, Kevin, for all that you do for the Department of Conservation, and then everybody else on the meeting today. If you're a state employee or you work for another organization, thank you for your commitment to making PDFs accessible. And this ends our session.
Thank you.